Oh shit. This is a manual Toyota GR86 and this is an automatic, and today we're going to put them head to head to see which one's better. Today we're spending the day at Calabogie Motorsports Park and they lent me a manual Toyota GR86 to put head to head with my automatic one. I'm also going to tell you why I got an automatic one and not a manual. But what's really cool is both of these cars are available for rent in Calabogie Motorsports Park fleet of cars. You can do a full driving day with an instructor in my one, do an evening session where you play follow the leader in a manual one, or mix and match and do both. If you want to get on track and you're in the area or just want to make a trip out of it, consider coming out to Calabogie Motorsports Park because they have these and GR Corollas. And if you want some American muscle, they got some of that too. There's a link down below if you want to check them out. I guess let's answer the question though. What's better? A manual or an automatic? So here we go, jumping into the manual Toyota GR86. Make sure the handbrake's not on. All right, beautiful, let's go. Good thing I didn't stall it. That would have been a very embarrassing way to start this video. Over the past little while, I've received so many comments from people asking why I chose to get an automatic Toyota GR86 instead of a manual one. Clearly, I can drive a manual one. Why didn't I get one of those? I think we should explain the differences between the automatic one and the manual one and what they're like to drive, and if you're on the fence about buying one of these cars, why you should go for one or the other. Right out of the gate, although yes, these cars are heavily modified, they're actually set up basically exactly the same. The manual one still has a full interior, so I've got like the screen and the backup camera and everything like that, but I've got the same aero, I've got the same suspension, I've got the same brakes and everything. My automatic Toyota GR86, although yes, it is stripped, it does have a roll cage, and because of that, they actually kind of weigh about the same. So let's talk about the pros and cons of both. Why would you choose a manual car? Well, for one, it's a lot of fun. Being able to come into corners, brake, heel and toe, downshift into the corner, and then send it on your way is awesome. And it never gets boring. Oh, groundhog, hello. I don't know if it's just me though, when you're coming into a corner and you can do nice heel and toes, downshift it into the corner, whether you're on the racetrack or on the public street, you're just paying more attention. You can't sit there and be a little NPC, one pedal driving, just going about your day. No, you're a part of the car. You've got to pay attention to your revs. You've got to be smooth with your gear shifts and everything like that. And that's awesome, but it also comes with its downside. Driving a manual car in everyday bumper-to-bumper traffic is one of the worst experiences possible. It is definitely up there with stepping on a Lego brick at night while you're trying to walk to the bathroom. Okay, I might be exaggerating a little bit. It's actually not that bad. In a car like this, the clutch isn't super heavy and you can totally daily drive this car. It's really not that bad. Something like my Mustang, that has a significantly heavier clutch than this thing, and that would be a little bit more annoying to drive every single day if your commute is just bumper to bumper traffic, but even at that, it's still really not that bad. Here's the other thing though, if you live in North America, driving a manual car is kind of a rare thing these days, and because of that, you can actually get some really good cars a lot cheaper than their automatic version. Next time you're on like one of those used car websites, take a look at cars like, I don't know, like a Golf GTI for example. At least in the area I live, manual Golf GTIs are usually a couple $1,000s cheaper than their automatic equivalent. And at the end of the day, what that means is if you can drive a manual, you can sometimes save a couple $1,000s on a cool car. There is no getting around the fact though that boy is it fun to drive a manual car, especially when you're driving around a racing circuit like this. It is so good. Well, I think it is time we jump into my car, into the automatic, and I can tell you why I chose that one instead. This is always something that confuses me every time I drive a manual car on the racetrack. You know how usually when you park a manual car, you just pull the handbrake up? If you do that after driving on a racetrack, you will fuse your handbrake to your brakes in the back, so you always just have to leave it in gear, which is just, it feels really weird, but that's what you're supposed to do. Anyways, let's go jump into my car over there. I know, it looks a little bit different in here, but trust me, they're the same car. So depending on how many of my videos you've watched before, you might have noticed the way I actually like to drive my car is not in the regular automatic mode. I actually just put it to the flappy paddle mode, and I use the flappy paddles to shift gear. It doesn't give you the exact same control as a manual because I don't have a third pedal, and I actually drive this car by
left foot braking. My right foot just does the gas, the left foot just does the brake, and that's it. So again, the same way that the manual had like pros and cons, and automatic also has pros and cons. Obviously, the elephant in the room is that the biggest con has got to be that it isn't as fun, it isn't as engaging as the manual transmission. I also have some of my own nitpicky cons that I'll mention in a second, but let's start with the pros. The biggest pro of all is at the end of the day, it's easy to use. Anybody can jump into this car and drive it. And if you're driving around a race circuit like this, well, obviously you can focus on all of those corners, all of those apexes, the braking points, the acceleration zones, the vision points, and so on. And if you're driving around the public street, well then at the end of the day, you don't need to worry about sitting in traffic. You can sit in traffic all you want. One of the other things a lot of people don't necessarily think about too when they are driving an automatic transmission, it used to actually be the opposite. It used to be a con for the automatic and a pro for the manual, but in recent times it's actually switched, and probably still depending on what sort of car you're actually driving. An automatic transmission should get better fuel economy than a manual transmission. I do actually have one complaint though about this automatic transmission, and it's definitely a nitpicky thing. You might notice it when we do our race later on in the video, but sometimes when I'm trying to downshift, the car will not downshift. These boxer engines do not like higher revs and shifting into higher rev. If I'm trying to get every single ounce of speed from it and I pull a downshift, trying to like maximize my horsepower and my torque out of slower corners, sometimes the car just won't downshift. There's something in the computer system that says, no, you will downshift and your RPMs will be too high, when in reality, your RPMs wouldn't be too high. It's definitely like a safety system built into the transmission to try to keep things durable. At the end of the day, this was a road car, so it's still got the brains of a road car. If we jump back to the manual transmission though, I know there's going to be some people who watch this video who might be overwhelmed by the idea of a manual gearbox if you've never learned how to drive one or have never done it before, but trust me, you don't need to be. I guarantee if you're watching this video, you can learn how to drive manual in a week or less. You can probably get it in like an hour if I'm honest. Back in the day when I bought my Subaru STI, I bought that car and I didn't know how to drive it. The way I learned how to drive manual is by forcing myself to drive that car. There was no other option, and you just learn, you just figure it out. So trust me when I say, if you think you might be overwhelmed by a manual transmission, don't be. You will 100% figure it out, and you can do it. And that brings me back to the reason why I went with an automatic transmission over a manual. Here's the thing, with these Toyota and Subaru engines, if you're driving a manual transmission and you go to shift, and say you're shifting into fifth gear and you miss fifth, and you accidentally go into third, you money shift the transmission. These gearboxes do not have the strength to endure that sort of mistake, and they will blow up on you. There was actually a report, a guy in the United States money shifted his GR86 or his BRZ or whatever it was, and he blew up his transmission that caused his engine to blow up, and he got a bill for $18,000. So there's the money problem. I don't want to be driving around the race circuit, accidentally money shift the gearbox, and then end up with a $20,000 bill. At the end of the day, this car serves two purposes for me. Number one, it is my race car that I'm competing with this season. But number two, it also lives out here at Calabogie Motorsports Park. And like I said at the start of the video, you can rent this car. And that generates money for the race circuit and for me. By doing that, you're supporting us. I want everybody who comes out to this race circuit to be able to drive this car and experience it. And that is why I went for the automatic transmission. This is honestly the perfect little car. It's got a great amount of power, it doesn't weigh very much, it's got a lot of grip, but at the same time, it will definitely still slide around the corners. And I can guarantee you, this car will max out your driver ability faster than you can max out the performance of this car. I want everybody to experience this car, and I want you to have a great time while driving it. Not to mention, I want you to focus on the driving, learn how to take apexes, learn where to turn into corners. This circuit is massive and complicated and super technical. And if you're not 100% comfortable with a manual, I think you should stick with the automatic if you ask me. I think you'll just have more fun. Speaking of that championship, I've got a race coming up. Let's jump into it. That was lovely though. Huge shout out to Calabogie for letting me take out the 87 car. If you'd like to come rent my one or that one, there'll be a link down below like I said. That was fantastic.
So now that we got to play around with some GR86s, it's time to jump in mine for our second race of the season. And today, as you might be able to tell, is a rainy day. Luckily for us, we've got some new tires on the car, so hopefully I won't be sliding around as much as we were last time, but who knows? We've got to start the day with qualifying, and then we've got our second race. Let's jump in.
So welcome to race number 2 of the season. Hopefully this one goes well. It was a bit of a rainy day, but now it's actually clearing up, so we might actually have qualifying with dry-ish conditions. We'll see. Oh, Kim, oh my days, that was a... All right, so note to self, that corner is very, very slippery. Oh shit. That's not good. Steering broken. The car just fully slipped out from underneath me.
And this was brutal. I've never crashed any car before, let alone crashing a car on a racetrack. This completely shattered all of my confidence and my mental state. You see it in motorsport all the time. Watch NASCAR, you'll see cars crashing every single race. Watch Formula 1. Somebody puts a car into a wall, they cause millions of dollars in damages. And you and I, as a spectator, we watch that and go, that's just part of the sport. But when you're a driver and you're the one who put it into the wall, especially when it's your first time, you can kiss all of your confidence goodbye. Every single negative thought starts running through your head, asking yourself why you're even here in the first place. Eventually, I was on the back of the tow truck on the way back to the garage, and then when I got there, the guys from Powersports Garage started working their magic. They actually took one of the other GR86s in the rental fleet and started ripping suspension components off of that car to put onto my car so I could at least go and do the race and get some championship points. The guys worked so unbelievably quickly. All in all, the car was only down for 15 minutes. And the main damage was this, a control arm that was bent all out of shape, and that's why I couldn't actually drive to the pits in the end. And yes, I'm totally aware of the irony of wearing this merch, but it wouldn't be an AR12 video if I didn't take this perfect opportunity to remind you to pick up a Skill Issue hoodie. There's a link down below. So the only real damage to the car is this little bit of fender, which is now poking out a little bit wider than it should be, a little bit of scraping on the front, and a broken reflector, and that's it. Overall, very, very lucky. And then it was time to move off to the race. We can reflect on what happened, but we cannot dwell on what happened, and at the end of the day, we need to move forward. Anyways, here's what was going on for race number 2. Since race 2 was going on during one of the busiest race weekends of the year, not a lot of people ended up signing up for race number 2. I guess at the end of the day, some people just didn't want to come to the racetrack during one of the busiest race weekends of the year. I know some other people were actually working for some of the big proper race teams and obviously focused their efforts on those big race teams rather than racing themselves. So for this race, we only had 3 cars in our class. It's me, that blue BMW from last episode, and a silver BMW. And here's the thing, since somebody, I don't know who, ended up ruining qualifying for everybody, to start this race, we actually had to line up in the grid ordering finish from the last race, which means I'm starting in pole position because I won that race. And here we go, flag drops, and I'm immediately burnt by the BMW. There is something wrong with this car. It is not accelerating like it's supposed to. And only a couple of corners later, the silver BMW flew right on past. So not only am I dealing with a damaged mental state and kind of just being nervous while driving around the race circuit, but I am also nursing a broken car now. And I noticed while I was accelerating coming out of corners, I just wasn't getting the acceleration that I was supposed to. And when I was getting on the brakes into heavy braking zones, the car would vibrate from underneath me. It was really weird. After the race, I ended up telling the guys over at the garage what I was experiencing. And over the next couple of days, they ended up taking the wheels off and noticed that my brake rotors were actually warped. So essentially, for this entire race, I was sorta kinda driving with my brakes turned off. So going into turn 5, I should be doing 180 kilometers an hour. Here, I'm doing 150, 160. So I'm starting to think to myself inside the car, that's it. This race is over. There's nothing I can do. It's done. But you know what?
We do not give up. We do not come into the pits. We finish the race. So I take the checkered flag after lapping the circuit, probably slower than I've ever lapped it before.
And then the weirdest thing happened. I get back to the garage and people start telling me I finished second? You remember in the last episode when that blue BMW ran out of fuel? I'm not even joking, it happened again. This time, only 5 laps into the race, the blue BMW ran out of fuel and retired from the race. And somehow, me just trundling along with my brakes turned on pretty much the entire race, finished second. Last, but second. If there was ever a sign for not giving up, this is the sign. I am still leading the championship because even with a broken car, we still secured some good championship points. Hopefully race 3 is a better one.